You've been to one, you've probably cried at one, you may have paid for one, in which case you definitely cried. But have you ever stopped mid-reception, champagne in hand, and thought, why are we actually doing this? I mean, think about it. You're throwing a party that costs, on average, $30,000 in the United States alone to celebrate a legal contract that you could sign at a courthouse in 15 minutes for about $100. You rent a venue you'll never use again, you buy a dress you'll probably never wear again, you feed people you haven't seen in years, your distant uncle gets on the dance floor and you pretend not to know him. So why do we do it? Is it tradition, social pressure, a love of centerpieces? Turns out the answer is way more interesting than you'd expect, and it touches on anthropology, psychology, economics, religion, and the deep human need to be witnessed. Let's get into it. Here's the first thing you need to know. For most of human history, weddings had almost nothing to do with love. Romantic love as the basis for marriage is, historically speaking, a pretty recent idea. For thousands of years across nearly every culture on Earth, marriage was a fundamentally property and political arrangement. In ancient Mesopotamia, one of the earliest civilizations we have written records of, marriage was a legal contract between families, not individuals. A bride's father negotiated with the groom's family. Goods were exchanged, land, livestock, money. The wedding ceremony existed to seal that deal publicly, with witnesses who could later testify that yes, this transaction happened, and these two families are now bound together. In ancient Rome, marriage was about citizenship and inheritance. Who has the right to your name? Who gets your stuff when you die? The ceremony was a public declaration that answered those questions. For the nobility of medieval Europe, marriage was foreign policy. You didn't marry for love, you married to form alliances between kingdoms, to end wars, to secure bloodlines. Think about the British royal family. For centuries, who the monarch married literally changed the map of Europe. So the ceremony, the ritual, the gathering of witnesses, the public declaration wasn't a celebration, it was a legal and political instrument. The party existed to make the contract real, binding, and witnessed by enough people that no one could dispute it later. That is the ancient root of why we have weddings. And even though almost everything about weddings has changed, that core idea, public witnessing, never went away. Let's talk about that word, witnessed. Before written legal systems were widespread, before databases and government records, the way a community remembered things was through people. If enough people saw something happen, your marriage, your land purchase, your oath, then it happened. It was real. It was enforceable. A wedding ceremony, at its core, is a community saying, we saw this, we know, we will remember. And that's not just an ancient quirk we've outgrown. It's deeply woven into why weddings still feel important today, even when we have marriage licenses and government registries and, yes, Instagram. Psychologists who study commitment and relationships have a concept called public commitment, and the research is pretty consistent. When you declare something in front of other people, you are far more likely to follow through than if you just privately decide it yourself. Think about it in other contexts. If you quietly decide to yourself that you're going to run a marathon, that's nice. If you announce it to your friends, family, and coworkers, suddenly there's social accountability. People will ask you how training is going. You feel the weight of that declaration. Now imagine doing that in the most elaborate, formalized, expensive way possible, surrounded by everyone you love, with music and vows and a really good dinner afterward. That's a wedding. It's a commitment device. It's you and your partner saying to your entire social network, hold us to this. And your social network says back, we will. Now layer religion on top of all of this, and the wedding gets even more powerful. Most major world religions have a formalized marriage ceremony, and they all share a common thread. The idea that marriage isn't just a human contract, it's a sacred one. In Christianity, marriage is a sacrament, a moment where the divine is present and participating. You're not just promising each other, you're promising before God, which raises the stakes considerably. In Judaism, the ceremony under the kuppah, the wedding canopy, symbolizes the new home the couple is building together. It's layered with thousands of years of meaning, from the breaking of the glass to the wedding contract called the ketubah. In Hinduism, the wedding is one of the most elaborate rituals in a person's life, often lasting multiple days, with ceremonies that invoke cosmic forces and bind not just two people, but two families across generations. In Islam, the nikah is a formal contract with specific legal and spiritual components, witnessed, declared, and blessed. Across all of these traditions, the ritual does something that a courthouse visit simply cannot. It places your relationship inside a framework of meaning that is bigger than you. It connects your marriage to something ancient, communal, and sacred. And even for people who aren't particularly religious, that sense of ritual, the candles, the music, the formal words, the structured procession, still does psychological work. It marks the moment as different from every other moment. It says, this is not ordinary. This is a threshold you're crossing, and the ceremony is the door. Anthropologists have a term for ceremonies like weddings, rites of passage. The idea was formalized by a French ethnographer named Arnold van Gennep in 1909 and later expanded by anthropologist Victor Turner. The basic insight is this: human societies in every culture and every era have always created formal rituals to mark major life transitions: birth, coming of age, marriage, death. These rituals serve a real psychological function. They help individuals and their communities process the fact that a person's identity and social role have fundamentally changed. Before the wedding, you are two separate individuals. After it, you are a unit. You have new roles, new obligations, and new relationships to navigate. That's a massive shift in how you exist in the world. And the human brain, it turns out, doesn't handle vague transitions very well. We like clear markers. We like before and after. The ceremony is the line between them. That's why weddings feel so emotionally significant, even to guests who aren't the ones getting married. You're not just watching a party, you're watching someone you love cross a threshold. You're witnessing them become something new. That's profound, and the ceremony creates the space for you to feel that profundity together. Without the ceremony, you just kind of start living together, which is also valid and works for many people, but the ritual gives the transition weight and meaning that a quiet Tuesday at the courthouse doesn't quite capture. Here's another angle that doesn't get talked about enough. Weddings are one of the last remaining events in modern life where your entire social network gathers in one room. Think about your own life. Your childhood friends are scattered across different cities. Your family is spread out. Your work colleagues exist in a different silo from your college friends, which exist in a different silo from your neighborhood friends. Modern life has fractured our social worlds into disconnected bubbles. A wedding collapses all of those bubbles simultaneously. Your grandmother meets your college roommate. Your work colleagues meets your cousins. The person from your childhood meets the person from your adult life. For one day, all of the separate threads of your identity are woven together in one place. And that matters, not just emotionally, but practically. Research on social networks consistently shows that the strength of your community, your actual network of real relationships, is one of the strongest predictors of long-term health, happiness, and resilience. People with strong, dense social networks live longer, recover from illness faster, and report higher life satisfaction. A wedding isn't just about celebrating a couple, it's activating a community. It's reminding everyone in that room that they are connected to you, to each other, to something larger than their individual daily life. The reception isn't just a party, it's community infrastructure. Okay, but why does all of this have to cost $30,000? Fair question. Let's be honest, a significant chunk of modern wedding spending is driven by the wedding industry, which has a vested interest in convincing you that more spending equals more meaning. The explosion of the modern wedding industry is largely a 20th century phenomenon. Before that, most weddings were held at home, catered by family, and kept relatively modest. The white wedding dress itself, which everyone assumes is an ancient tradition, was popularized by Queen Victoria in 1840. Before her, brides just wore their nicest dress, whatever color it happened to be. But there's also something real underneath the spending: signaling. Economists and sociologists have long observed that the scale of a wedding signals the seriousness of the commitment. When you spend significantly on a wedding, when you invest in the ceremony, you're communicating something to your partner, to your family, to your social network. This is real. This matters. I am not casual about this. Now, you can absolutely have a deeply meaningful, commitment signaling wedding that costs a fraction of the average, but the cultural pressure to spend big is real, and it's tied to this older idea that the grandeur of the ceremony reflects the importance of the bond. Whether you buy into that or not is up to you, but understanding why that pressure exists makes it a little easier to navigate. So, we live in a world where marriage rates are declining, where people are getting married later or not at all, where cohabitation is completely normalized, where the legal and financial reasons to marry have changed dramatically. And yet, weddings aren't going away. If anything, the ones people do have become more elaborate, more personalized, more intentional. Why? I think it's because even as the legal and economic functions of marriage have faded, the human functions have only become more important. We live in an era of radical individualism and increasing social isolation. We have more digital connections and fewer deep ones. We move cities, change jobs, and lose touch with communities. In that context, a wedding is an act of profound social courage. It's standing up in front of the people you love most and saying, I am choosing this person, publicly, permanently, in front of all of you. It's asking your community to witness something sacred and hold you accountable to it. It's weaving yourself into a network of meaning at a time when those networks are fraying. It's a rite of passage in a world that has abolished most of its rites of passage. And it's a party, which, frankly, we don't have enough of. So, the next time you're sitting at a wedding, watching someone cry through their vows, trying to figure out which fork is for the salad, remember, you're not just at a party. You're participating in one of the oldest human rituals on Earth. You're a witness. You're part of the community that's saying, we see you. We'll remember this. We've got you. That's worth the open bar.